Hello, Feral Druids. I'm back with some new information. Just been updated on the Wowhead site. New changes to Druid. It feels like we are constantly getting changed, and it's great. You know, like we're not in a great spot. Blizzard realized this, and I'm just happy that the changes are coming before the raid, and the changes should be done. They say. Blizzard has announced Feral Druid changes coming later this week. Okay, so before we even hit the raid, week 4, we're going to be getting changes. So that's great. And what are the changes? I'll read them with you. Energy regeneration rate increased by 10%. Great. We are struggling with energy, and that's like something we've all been talking about. We're trying to come up with ways to go around this, and these are like long-term goals right here. So it's really great they're addressing this. The 10%. How I feel about that, I think it's going to be pretty good. I think it's going to be needed. Um, Rip damage increased by 15%. This is interesting because as we looked at the last video, Rip has a very high scaling cap or scaling, so it scales really well with agility, and increasing its damage. It's going to be interesting. As we read through this, a lot of our stats are probably going to change. Berserk duration increased. Awesome. That's beautiful. Brutal Slash cost reduced from 30 to 25. This is great for our Mythic Plus runs, our Mythic Dungeons. It's going to be great for our AoE. Swipe cost reduced. That's awesome. Thrash cost reduced. Really good. One of my even Azurite gears says like I need to thrash in order to do more damage with my Brutal Slash and my Shred. And it really sucks because of the 45 energy. So they're reducing that. Says we're reducing the energy cost of Thrash, but also proportionally reducing the damage. Okay, so damage is also getting reduced from Thrash. That's fine. The goal is easier ramp up time in AoE situations, while avoiding causing Thrash to be added to the single target rotation. Okay, hopefully they change the Azurite trait as well, or else I need to get rid of that because it's terrible. Since it's close to Shred's energy to damage ratio, which we think would make for a better overall rotation. Great, keep it out of single target. Perfect. The spec's hidden 50% increase to haste secondary stat value reduced to 25%. This helps alleviate a secondary stat scaling issue, and both the energy and damage loss should be overcompensated for by the increase to base energy regeneration rate plus the other changes listed. Okay, so they're changing our haste. They're lowering it, and to fix it, you know, they're giving us this 10%. So they're kind of saying it's fine for the change. We eventually want to remove this hidden bonus entirely, but since players have already made gearing choices based on haste being their best secondary stat, we don't want to upset that in short term, so we'll do this in 2 parts. Okay, so they're reducing haste on us. Okay, so this, just them reducing haste on us is going to reduce our regeneration rate a little bit, but they're giving us the 10%, so I think overall it's a buff. But this is going to change up our stats here. So the sum of these changes is intended and expected to be increase in energy income / pacing and damage in all situations. Okay, other issues we've been talking about for future patch timeline. Better consolidate energy, increasing and heavy pacing impacting talents in the same row, and reducing the impact or the pacing and impact that a single talent has. Okay, the goal is to reduce the energy pacing swing between different talent builds. Okay, which allows us to bring up the bottom without letting the highest energy pacing talents build with in-game, late-game expansion gear to get near overflow range. Okay, so they're going to try to balance out some of these because some of these talents are extremely strong at the beginning of the expansion, while in-game they're going to be less strong and others will dominate. So trying to level that out, that sounds fine. That'd be good for me because maybe I prefer a talent over there. I definitely do not like blood talents. It makes it interesting, but not as fun. Better separate single target talents and multi-target talents into their own rows. That's nice. So you either choose. I feel like that is kind of already. There's definitely brutal slash. Sometimes you may put it, choose it in a mythic raid. I don't know, but I would go Savage Roar over it. depending on DPS, how it scales. So that's kind of, Savage Roar to me already is a single target, and Brutal Slash is the AoE. But maybe they're going to change it. Maybe they're going to have further up the talents and down all the way the talents, they'll have straight single targets and AoE picks. Be interesting. Um, this is slightly more of a challenge on Druid specs than most specs, due to Druids having only 4 throughput talent rows compared to most specs having 5. But it's a goal we have for all specs. Okay. So I wonder what they'll do with some of our either speed boost talents or healing, or not the healing. There's one that's healing. There's one that's a further range. And so that'd be interesting what they would do. Maybe either change one of those up. They would like to provide better AoE talent options. Echoing suggestions, a combo point spender is a possible direction. Okay. There may be an additional opportunity to do something with Thrash here. Its function is as an enabler, but could be doing even more for the spec. Okay. Blood Talons. Okay, this is interesting to read this. Blood Talon does a great job at adding complexity to rotation. Yeah, it sure does. But we're not sure the method in which it does that is right for the spec long term. Great, change it. I don't like it. Blood Talon asks you to frequently cast Regrowth in exchange for its buff, which in a group/raid means either you're required to keep an eye on a group/raid frames. I've thought about doing that. I usually just buff it for myself, but you can regrow something else, cast on something else. But the healing, don't even think about doing that. Even if they haven't changed it yet, don't think about doing the healing is so minor. Don't do it. In exchange for its buff, which in a group/raid means either you're required to keep an eye on the group raid frames, which is a lot to ask, and it really is, because your rotation on Feral is nuts. Or you make a macro to mindlessly cast Regrowth on yourself, which isn't great. And that's kind of what I do. It's just self-cast. Remove the specs bonus to haste secondary stat. Currently on live, 50%, soon to be 25% entirely. So they want to get rid of haste entirely, which they do need to do that later, because if they remove the haste entirely, we're going to go down to even this energy regeneration rate probably is not going to make up. We're probably going to be as we are now, kind of in the slums. But maybe as we get better gear, um, maybe as we get better gear, and then they get rid of the haste completely, maybe we'll be in a better spot. Who knows? But that's interesting. And readjust energy/pacing to compensate. Okay. Mentioned above, but now that bleeds scale with haste, it's both no longer needed to make haste a relevant stat for Feral. Wait, mentioned above, but now that bleeds scale with haste, it's both no longer needed to make haste a relevant stat for Feral, and it is also contributing to expansion-wide scaling issues. Okay, so they really are not liking haste. And they don't like that it's scaling with our bleeds, which they made. So it's looking like they want us to go away from haste completely. It's interesting that haste is going to be, they want it to be kind of like our crap stat. Since RIP does so much damage, it's going to be doing a lot of damage. It's going to be a little confusing that, I mean, maybe they want us to go mastery. Maybe mastery is one of the ones. Okay, remove cat's forms, 40% bonus to auto attack damage. Okay, yeah, that's haste. They want our haste gone. That's really interesting, because I thought it was really strange that they did that. But I mean, it did make it nice because it made it more forgiving for Feral to not rely on the bleed so much. Because Feral in the past, if you go away from the boss, and a lot of boss mechanics require you to do that. Like let's say you get something on, you need to leave the boss to save the raid or something, to do some kind of mechanic. You leave your boss, you leave your bleeds. You're not restacking your bleeds. It can cause a lot of damage to your DPS, unlike certain classes, because we scale. We scale into the fight. We gotta kind of prep to do our most damage. We can't just open up and do a crap ton of damage. So the auto attack was kind of nice because it made it so it wasn't as bad, but now it looks like they're reverting, and we're going to go back to that. So that's interesting, but it will mean that, like, hey, since we're not more auto attack, it feels like we're doing more. You know, like our abilities are actually contributing to our damage more than they are now. This contributes to feedback that abilities don't hit hard enough and have low energy to damage conversion ratios. Yeah, you don't want to be spending a lot of energy on something that doesn't do anything. Note that as we've mentioned before, we're watching overall class tuning and plan to make a general tuning pass later next week. Okay, so I believe I'm just going to take their input. This is going to hit, as they say, later this week, week 3, the week before the raid, and then they're watching us, the tuning, and that's going to be happening next week as well for the raid. You know what? Good job, boys. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking care of our spec. You know, it felt a little like we're in the slums, but thank you. It's going to be interesting. We'll keep an eye out, everyone, and I will keep you updated on our new stats once they come out. Once I start getting a feel for the class, new stats. As of now, everyone, go into your mythics, your mythic zeros. Save every single gear you get, every single purple. Do not throw any away. Do not give any away. We do not know what our stats are. Haste is no longer your stat. Get rid of your haste. If you have been running bear, make sure you keep your bear stuff because you're trying to get a lot of mastery and maybe versatility. That might be our best stats. Okay. Thank you so much for watching. I am so glad for the updates. Leave some comments if you guys are excited. Finally, we're getting some. We're gonna our numbers are gonna get up there. We're gonna get relevant again. Take it easy, guys. Have a good day.